Hey there, and welcome to the Confident Chemistry Teacher Podcast. I'm Kim, your go-to chemistry coach for engaging teaching strategies and simple solutions to the everyday challenges chemistry teachers face. Let's get this reaction started. Hi everyone. In the last episode, I talked about how I planned my big goals for the year using my ChatGPT to help me out with that. But this week's episode, I'm going to give you a series of steps of ways that you can gather some feedback from yourself, from your students, and from your colleagues. I also created some resources for you that you can use to do all three of those things. The link will be in the show notes. So, as I mentioned on the previous podcast, I really felt that my year was kind of chaotic, it was disorganized, it was overwhelming, and it really didn't feel the way that I wanted my year to feel. Maybe you felt like that too. And I'm going to tell you, it's not that I wasn't doing enough work, and I'm sure it's not because you're not doing enough work. It's just because there's too much work for us to do. I don't want to spend 40 hours a week during the summer planning and doing things for the next year, but I definitely am going to be putting some time in over the summer to make next year better. So the first thing to do is just to reflect on how your year went. What were some of the challenges that you had? What were some systems that you thought went great? What were some systems maybe that you want to improve over the summer? Is there a new teaching strategy that you want to try? Do you want to organize your lessons a little bit differently? So even if you can just pick that one thing, think how much better your next school year would be. The next thing to do is to survey your students. And when I made this survey, I have it as an editable Google Doc as well as an editable Google form. So whether you like the kids to give you the feedback on paper or in the digital form, you have two options. When I surveyed my students this year, I did get a lot of do less work. And so when you read the student surveys, you really have to take it with a truckload of salt. You want to look for these patterns or things in particular that students are struggling with, and don't take every little criticism. I always tell them to give me constructive feedback, but you'll still get some kids that are like, I hate this class. And it even says on the student survey, if you hate this class, that is okay, but you need to tell me what I can do to make this class better. Some examples of this questions on the student survey is what helped you learn most in this class. And so I broke it down a little bit more about was there a specific activity? Was there a specific way that I taught? Was there something we did in class that helped? What topic or teaching method was most challenging? What could the teacher have done differently to help you understand better? What should the teacher do more of next year? What should the teacher do less of? So it just has several different questions on there where you can get specific feedback from your students. When my students did these, they actually came up with some really good ideas. You already know that I'm a big Poggle fan. One of the things that I'm finding at my new school is students don't work as fast as they did at my previous school. So they always felt a little defeated when they wouldn't finish the Poggle in class. So next year, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have them cross off some questions in the Poggles and then let the kids maybe that do finish it go back and complete those questions. I just want them to be more focused on the key questions, and then they'll feel more accomplished because they would have completed the assignment. I also do use an interactive notebook with my students. And so I'm kind of investigating some ways how I can make that better for them next year. I'm wondering if I can just buy the little pocket 3-prong portfolios and have the students keep their papers in those. I feel like binders are really, really big and they are kind of expensive for my kids. Usually I give almost all of my kids the notebooks that they use. And so I wouldn't want to buy every kid a binder in my class. Another thing that I am going to try is every other Friday have a makeup day. And I stole this title from the lady that does Pocket Full of Primary. She calls it a ketchup and pickles day. So like ketchup, like you'd put on your hamburger, pickles like you'd put on your hamburger. But the idea is like it's to catch up and then to pick and choose what you want to work on. So at my school, we have a really high absenteeism rate. And I am like a bell to bell teacher. I really want to fill every day with as much knowledge as I can get into these kids' brains. But what that doesn't leave time for is for students who were absent to make up their work, or for students who need to make up a quiz or do test corrections to do those. My students do not come in after school for extra help. They won't come in after school to do labs. And so I really want to make sure that we are having time to do that. Also, I started doing this more towards the end of the year is I'll print off some progress reports of my kids that are in the 40 or 50% range, those kids that are close to passing. And then I can actually get some time on those Fridays to check in with them to see what we can do to get them over that finish line and pass. Also, on these Fridays, it'll be a great time for students to catch up on those interactive notebooks if I do continue to keep using the ones like where you have to trim the pages and tape everything in. Some tips to help you out with this is you want to try to keep the surveys anonymous. And honestly, at this point of the year, you probably know what their handwriting looks like if you give them the paper version. And some of my kids knew it was anonymous, but still put their names on it. I definitely told my students that I really wanted to be a better teacher. They know that I really love teaching. And so I was like, what can I do next year to help you guys be more successful? I asked my chemistry kids, and I was kind of blunt with them. I was like, your guys' math skills were not where I would think that they would have needed to be at the beginning of the year. And then I said, wasn't it kind of hard to learn the math and the content at the same time? What could I do to front load some of that math at the beginning of the year? And they gave me some really good ideas. They're like, go ahead, take 20 minutes every Monday and teach some math that we're going to need for that week. And then again, I want to remind you to look for patterns. Don't focus on one negative comment. I know that I've been having a lot of discipline issues with my kids, but then when I talked to my friend about it, she was like, how many kids are really being bad in your class right now? And then honestly, without me even prompting them on this survey, so many of the kids said that I was a good teacher or that they enjoyed my class. And so really, it's easy to focus on the few negative behaviors in the class and not on the larger picture about how many kids you really are making a difference with. The next people that you might want to survey, certainly not a requirement, are maybe your colleagues or your administration. For example, with your colleagues, are you guys getting a new curriculum? Do you need to get a head start on that? Are there any school policies that are changing? Is there anything that you want to change next year? For example, at my current school, they let kids use their notes on all of their assessments. So next year, I'm going to transition the kids from being able to use their notes to just being able to use study guides. Most of us probably by now have had our end of the year eval from our admin. And one of the things that I got back from my admin is that they wanted me to engage more with the objective. It's all about putting those learning objectives on the board, interacting with them these days. So I actually came up with a system, those daily learning plans. So was there something that your administrator mentioned that they would like you to do different next year? Again, is there a school-wide focus that you need to do? Does your admin want your kids to be more active in your classroom next year? Well, that doesn't mean you have to learn 15 new activities. Really, just learn 2 or 3 over the summer and then keep recycling them in your class. And I know that might seem boring, like, oh, my kids will get bored of it. But if you're rotating them through, they'll actually feel more comfortable because the first time you do an activity, like as a soccer coach, the first time you do that drill, it does not go as well as you think it should go. And then though you do it a second time, it gets a little better. Third time, it gets even better. So Just pick one thing or one area where you can improve and work towards that. Once you've gathered all that feedback, now you're going to go ahead and complete a reflection page. So again, we don't want to just focus on doing like 50 tasks over the summer. We maybe want to look for a few small tasks that would have a big difference on the start of the school year. So you don't want to say, oh, I should totally redo my entire curriculum. Like that would be fun, I think, because I'm a nerd, but you probably don't have enough time to do that over the summer. So try to choose the top priorities, the ones that are going to have the highest impact, and like really one thing that's going to reduce your stress for next year. So hopefully now you'll be able to, after you've looked at everything, considered everything, you'll be able to make meaningful goals for the summer and not have a to-do list that is 50 to 100 tasks long. So remember, you don't need to reinvent yourself over the summer. Sometimes the biggest things that you can do can just come from shifting one or two systems. That's going to make the whole school year feel more manageable. Now, I do want to remind you that I did make an end-of-year reflection and survey toolkit for you, and that link will be in the show notes. And it's going to include directions. It's going to include that teacher reflection page. It includes the student survey on paper, and then it includes the Google Forms student survey. So please download that from the show notes. So if you're getting excited about planning for next year, I'd like to invite you to join me for my June free Facebook Live sessions to help you plan your year. I'm going to go through the year at a glance. I'm going to share some labs and lab safety tips. I'm going to be giving tips on digital organization. And then I'm going to be working on what do I want to do in the first few weeks of school. These sessions will be on Tuesday nights at 5:30. They'll go for about 40-45 minutes. I'd love to see you there. I'll also put the link to sign up for the Facebook Live sessions in the show notes. And as always, you guys, keep inspiring, keep experimenting, and keep being awesome in your classrooms. Thanks for listening, and I can't wait to hear what your plans for this summer are.